Hi, I'm Tanya. I started coming to Waukesha First Assembly back in the 90s before it was changed to Bridge Church. I had not come from a Christian home, but God became my refuge as I grew up in a home with an alcoholic parent. Daily neglect, sexual abuse. My earliest memories were before I even entered grade school, and emotional abuse. I remember as a young girl laying in bed at night and making a deal with God. I didn't know him, not like I do now, but I knew enough of him to know I loved him. I would repeat, I love you, God. I love you, God, as my thank you for breathing life into me for one more day. Shortly after my first year of college, I formally gave my life to Jesus, sold out and never turned back. When Zachary, my firstborn, turned 6 months old, we answered the call to serve on the mission field in Spain and Russia. Benjamin and Rachel soon joined us, and I loved being a mom. During these early years, I was also in full-time ministry, leading Bible studies, small groups, teaching Sunday school. I was also in Bible school studying theology. I couldn't get enough of all things God. And the more I worked for the kingdom, the more I learned I needed to learn. There was always a small voice in me, though, that was telling me there was something more. I felt alone in this deep pit within me, which was unfillable. I worked harder to learn more. I inundated myself with studies and sermons and books and broadcasts, each time thinking I got the revelation I was looking for. Yet still, I felt like something was missing. The kids grew up so fast, and as we were getting ready for Zach's high school graduation, I was forced to let go of my baby's hand. He was unable to recover from a nightmare crash which ended up taking his life. That week, that dark, endless black hole of a week was spent spinning and vomiting and screaming and praying. And then my hands were pried away from his as he was taken from me. I thought I would never recover. At that moment, life had ended as I knew it. My world, which I tried so hard to put together, I'd followed the rules, checked the boxes, I crossed the T's. It was forever changed. I remember walking down the hallway at the hospital and talking to God. I understood that in spite of all the 20 plus years of living my Christian life, I did not truly understand God's character. For we had the faith of a mustard seed. We had more than 2 or 3 gathered. So I vowed to spend the rest of my life getting to know this God that I loved. Zach's yearbook was delivered to us when I first read his senior quote. Life is really very simple. We just insist on making it complicated. I realize now that that was a word I needed. I had been making it too complicated. The word hope, though, was a word I didn't fully grasp. It became life to me on the day that we had to plan his funeral. It followed me through the years until I could understand it. My relationship with God changed considerably after that, and so did my life. Within 2.5 years, I lost my son, my 20-year marriage, my mom died, and then my business closed. I was living on fumes. I dropped an excessive amount of weight, and I lived in survival mode, quite recklessly. It felt very empty. I sought lots and lots of noise to fill the silence, and I no longer looked forward to anything. For many years, all I could do was go through the motions. I communicated with God in a much less formal way. I walked and I talked about everything. I never hated him. I tried not to ask why, and I knew it was much too big for me to ever comprehend, but my tolerance for superficiality was gone. And then, about 6 years later, this thing happened. I was quietly working an invisible, simple, normal flying, way under the radar kind of life. I took a normal job, and God found me. I was at work on a call trying to land a huge deal when I heard a sniffle at the other end of a work call from a complete stranger. And then he said, "I'm sorry for your pain." I replied, "Well, what pain?" I was in denial, but God saw, and this man was able to feel it. All my pain through a work call having absolutely nothing to do with anything except for their company's infrastructure. And this is when I truly began to believe in miracles. This was a miracle. Through the course of a few years, the man on the other end of that conversation was given revelation of my story, my prayers, my dreams. God had shown him things that I had even forgotten. God saw me, he heard me, and he always loved me. And this man and his family, they loved me through this healing in the most supernatural, miraculous way. El Roy, the God who sees me, he does. Well, I saw how the self-preservation layer I used to protect me from others hurting me, unaware that it even existed, but it was standing in the way of a deeper faith, and that layer is called pride. I committed to the process of healing and seeking God. I isolated myself from all outside forces. I opened every hidden closet from my life and submitted to all my hurts, all my memories, everything to the Lord. In that time, though, of isolation and incredible deep healing, I came to know His voice. I saw visions and learned His character, and my dead, dry bones came to life, and the scales fell away from my eyes. He showed me how to take captive my thoughts, to dress in the armor, and to be still. This was really very simple. We did it. I no longer needed to make it so complicated, and it wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it would be. And I recognized that this is what was missing. It is possible. It does exist. And the peace I experienced is absolutely indescribable. The joy is truly incomprehensible, and it really, truly does exist. And hope, my sweet boy, oh my sweet boy, his chapters in my life allowed God to deliver hope. God loved me all along, and like the woman at the well, I recognize my story is not just for me. In fact, it's not even about me. And tonight, when I go to sleep, I'll feel God's loving arms around me, knowing my sweet boy went before me. And as much as I have loved him, God loves him so much more. And still, I'll sing out to God, I love you, God, realizing that I love him too.